My name is Megan Dickin. I served in the Peace Corps in Peru, 2009 through 2010. And I really tried to just, move on and just not let the things get me down. And, I stuck it out for about 6 more months after that. And I had ups and downs and good points and then low points, and then finally it just kind of hit a low where I was like, I can't live like this. And the PTSD and the depression was just getting worse. And so I finally basically demanded to have an evaluation by a psychiatrist just to see why I was crying all the time and upset and angry. And so yeah, he confirmed that I had PTSD and I needed to go home. Immediately when I told him my story about all the things that had happened, he said, "You definitely have PTSD and you need to go home." And I didn't want to go home. After all that, I fought with him. I'm like, "No, I need to stay." But he's like, "You really need to go home and just get better and just get out of this environment because it triggers you." And he's like, "I can't believe you've stayed an entire year." And I said, "Yeah, I'm committed." But yeah, I stuck it out for a year, and so I can definitely call myself an RPCV after that. So yeah, those were some of my major memories.
Wow, amazing stories.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, thanks for letting me share. I would be really interested to know how many other volunteers have experienced what I've experienced or come home, had a medical separation for PTSD, and how it was handled and just how they moved on with their lives and how they processed their feelings of bitterness for what's happened, yet the loyalty and the pride of being a Peace Corps volunteer, because it's very conflicting and it's very bittersweet. And just, seeing, I would just really be interested to know how many other people have had PTSD from the Peace Corps and just how they've processed it and what it's taken and how long it's taken them to get through it and just how they've dealt with it and used it maybe to either make their lives better or not. I don't know. I've always wanted to find another Peace Corps volunteer that felt like I did and had that bittersweet feeling about it and what they did with those feelings.
Okay, leave that for now. You never can tell something's going to come out. But it's striking, this Donald who works here, he's only going to be around to May or something, and I think he's moving to Boston. But he'd be a good one to talk to, but he's the one that's kidney shut down I told you about, that you just met, this fellow, that was just in here.
The professor?
Yeah,
Is he? Oh, okay.
But he was in Nepal. He could be a good person to talk to. Do we have his? I'll email you his contact information.
Okay.
And you can, you two might want to talk. Because I have a feeling, yeah, because he was saying that, that to honor the Peace Corps, he talked about in the context of being with a soldier, a veteran, and being honored. He said, well, he thinks Peace Corps should be honored too, and how some people got upset about it. He said, well, no. They go through, like the statistics, 1 out of 1,000 soldiers dies, 1 out of 750 volunteers dies. So that says something about...
1 out of 750?
That was the statistics he came up with, yes.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's more than a soldier ratio.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that would be a start to your conversation with it, because I have a feeling he must have had some of that with that thing that he had, and you had your stories. Just the two of you may at some point would have a chance to share, and I'll just send both of you email addresses, what you choose. That's fine. But I agree with what you just said. With that in mind, we'll see. Who knows? You've inspired me in another little side thought as we travel the country. If I find other stories like yours, I'll put you people in connection with each other, because I think that is important, that kind of sharing. It's very good.
Right, and I don't know how many other people are afraid to share a story like that, because I kind of wasn't sure if I should, because I don't want the Peace Corps to look bad.
When people have said that to me, is like I'm thinking of the woman in Ann Arbor now. And she said, "Oh, I don't know how to mention this." And then she said, "This happened to me back when." And it was still a burden on her, yes. And this is like 30, 40 years later.
Right, because you don't want to make the Peace Corps look bad.
Right.
Because it wasn't all bad. However, an experience like that can tint the rest of your experience. And being able to process that is so important. And for example, one of my brothers, well, two of my brothers went into the military, Marines, and fought, but one of my brothers was infantry. So he did a couple of tours in Iraq and saw a lot, people killed, blown up in front of him, the whole works. And I just can't imagine going through that. And when I talked to him on the phone when I came home, and a lot, because I knew that he had seen so many terrible things. And I said, "How did you get through it?" And well, first of all, he told me that I was braver than he was. And I said, "There's no way that I'm braver than you. You had bullets flying at you and saw people killed." And he's like, "Yeah, but I would have never ran toward a pack of dogs to pick up a stick." You know? And that was really encouraging to hear a Marine say that I was brave. But he processed all, because surely he had PTSD, because my sister-in-law would say that he'd wake up in nightmares and just different. He was different when he came home. But he was able to, after he got out of the military, work for contractors and do things still with the Marines. And he was able to share stories with other Marines, and they were able to share stories, their combat stories, and laugh about it and be serious about it, and they could understand each other and where they were coming from, because they both seen the same things, both had the same feelings. And so having that support group of people that knew where he was coming from helped him get through it. Whereas, you know, someone in a situation like mine, you don't meet a lot of other Peace Corps volunteers that have gone through that. And you don't want to talk with a soldier or other veterans about it, because maybe they're not like my brother and they just laugh at you. Like, you got PTSD from a gun in your face. Well, I was shot and my friends were killed. So the comparison is it's not the same. So I would feel uncomfortable speaking with other veterans about my PTSD, because it's on a different level. But it's still PTSD. And so not having other volunteers to talk that out with and share those stories with, who really understand what it's like, I think was harder, because nobody can relate. None of your friends know what it was like to live with chickens and dirt floors. None of your family members, and then the other volunteers that you served with, didn't have something like that happen to them. Or other volunteers you meet, either they don't talk about it or it didn't happen to them. So it's really hard to relate.
Well, you inspire me. That's one of my goals now as I go around the country. If I find other stories like this, let you people know about each other and then share with them.
That would be awesome. That would be so great to have, like, Peace Corps PTSD.
There you go.
Support groups.
There you go.
Did you by any chance see, I think it was about a year ago, there was a big to-do about, there were like 5 girls, young ladies that had been raped.
In Peace Corps.
In the Peace Corps. And there was the big...
Yeah.
They were like a support group for each other.
Yeah. And I think that set Peace Corps on their toes, really on their toes, to say, hey, these need, this needs to be taken care of. But that was some time ago, and I'm thinking, gee, you're pretty recent.
Right. Yeah. But then there was
But I didn't hear anything in any of those news items about, I've heard, well, yes, we're going to look into this and have better security. But what about this thing after, like this, like literally a PTSD support group, or volunteers that could share this? I haven't heard anything like that emerge, but should. Yes.
Well, and from what I've heard, because I think it was last year, there was the huge special in 60 Minutes about all this stuff, and from what I've kind of gathered is that the Peace Corps' response to this is more prevention and more education.
Right.
However, like I was saying earlier, there's only so much you can prevent because life happens and you can't control other people when they want to rob you. So you can't always prevent it, but it's the response to that is where I think is lacking. Because if I had been asked the right questions, more specific questions from my counselors, because I spoke to counselors on the phone, and more recognition of me being melancholy and like spacing out and not participating by my training staff, or things like that, aftermath, or more follow-up from the doctors, or more follow-up from the counselor, because I had to initiate every time I wanted to talk to a counselor. I had to initiate it. And sometimes when you're in that place, you can't ask for help. You don't know you need help. And so having follow-up from the doctors, having follow-up from the counselor, having better aftercare, I think is what needs to be focused on.
Right. I agree.
Because they can't prevent everything, but they can treat it, get through it. And of course, preventative measures are so important. But once something does happen, you have to treat it. You can't just say, oh, well, next time we'll keep it from happening. Well, what about that person that it happened to? Where are they? They're sitting in their dark hole. Nobody's trying to shine a light to get them out. And even my health program director, like 6 months in, she came to a site visit and came and did a site visit. And she was the one I had told early on, right after it happened, and was like, I was crying. And she just told me about a story that when she got robbed, and like, just work through it. The more you work, the more you'll forget about it. And I was like, well, I'll try. But 6 months later, she was doing site visits with all the volunteers, and she said, Megan, you're the only volunteer that's sad. You're the only one that seems sad. And I was like, oh, yeah. And, but she's like, do we need to change your host family or your room? Or, because I was in kind of a small, dark, kind of cinder blocky room, and I'm sure that didn't help my symptoms at all, or my issue, and I said, no, my host family is very nice, and I don't know, I just don't know. And everybody kept saying, like, I needed a meaningful project, and I needed to just work through it, but you can't even get yourself to think straight enough to follow through with a project when you've come to that point, when you're so deep into this psychologically. And I mean, she said she saw it. She saw that I was sad, and that, but I guess she just, either her personality, or she didn't know to recognize things, or but when it's so obvious, why wasn't anything followed up with or done to investigate it further? Like, why is Megan so sad? Why is she the only volunteer that's sad? That seems kind of strange. And she thought, well, if you want to quit and go home, that's okay. It's just kind of like encouraging that, and I didn't want to do that. So, like I said, I just think that the response can be improved on as well as the prevention.
Definitely. Well, thank you.
Thanks.